And hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're here for a show, but it's going to be called Your Dota 2 News. By the way, I came up with that name for the show now. Um, this week in Dota 2, not great for SEO slash algorithm slash etc. purposes. Gonna go with Your Dota 2 News because it's a fairly wide open field in terms of keywords in Google. So gonna go with
I'm
that.
just along for the ride. I really don't care.
Your Dota 2 News. Make sure to follow and comment and like and subscribe and tell us how great the new name is. If not, then do the other stuff, but don't comment. Anyway, I'm Steven Rondina, Bleach Report, Esports and MMA. My co-host, as usual, MTarget, broadcaster, streamer, etc. And for the last week, we haven't really seen much in terms of actual Dota 2 action since the end
That's
of
not
the.
true. MDL started.
Yeah, MDL started, but it was a bang 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 kind of thing before that with qualifiers. Yeah. Then before that was Zotac, or not Zotac, Galaxy Battles and Summit, and before that, etc., etc. But right now, MDL is going on. But the biggest news of the last week came, last week. It came last week in the form of an announcement about a new format for the 2017-2018 competitive Dota 2 schedule. And for the last couple of years, it's been largely built around a few, either 3 or 4 Valve events, being 2 or 3 majors per year, plus the international. And now we're actually going to take a wildly different approach, which more closely resembles the Capcom Pro Tour, right?
It's I would say definitely closest to Capcom Pro Tour. But I was gonna say it also does kind of not represent, but it kind of relates to the Counter-Strike system.
Okay. It also very closely resembles qualifying for the Olympics in single sports.
True.
If you want to get in for judo or taekwondo, you basically do this.
And this isn't too far off from the way that even like World Cup is in a lot of ways, because it's for football or soccer, because it's that same concept of you play X amount of stuff for points to then get into actual qualifiers, etc.
Yeah, and very different from what we currently have, which is, again, a few majors, which have qualifiers, but other than that, invites are decided fairly arbitrarily, very unscientifically.
I'm sure there was science behind the scenes. We just didn't know about it.
Yeah, they either way. Now we get a much more.
If there wasn't science, Navi would have been invited to TI. Let's be honest here.
Yeah. I mean, they got in on the qualifiers. They led the fish to, or they led the horse to water. Just didn't drink enough. But anyway, so instead of having a Boston major, Kiev major, Shanghai major, etc., we are now going to have 2 different levels of tournaments, which are majors and minors. Valve is more or less taking itself out of the picture with the exception of the international. And the majors and minors will be held, correct me if I'm wrong, but exclusively by third-party tournament organizers.
That's the vibe that I'm getting right now. I would not be surprised at all if in a year Valve went, no, we don't like this quite as is, and shifted it to being a little bit more involved. Although, again, to note, technically, all of the majors were done by third party anyways. It was just,
that's true.
It was the PGL, Manila, Boston, Kiev, etc. So I would not be surprised if Valve,
Shanghai was who?
Perfect World.
Okay.
And the very first major was ESO 1.
Okay.
So that's so I think that we're going to see something similar to, I don't really know what we're going to see something similar to, but yeah, so we're going away from Valve. I think that Valve might want to set some limits in terms of how many majors there can be and go from there.
Maybe.
Because I could see a couple companies ponying up the the 500 grand a couple times a year, and really just trying to push out the minors. I could see it happening. I doubt it.
I
but
also could, and I'll discuss that later. Should note that Nahaz over on his YouTube channel ran a video about this already, and I watched it and definitely agree with many of his points. So I'll probably post a link somewhere over here, maybe. So check that out. But for the most part, my own ideas as well as MTarget's own ideas, right? You didn't just
we can agree and disagree with Nahaz. I didn't watch the video, but I did see his tweets, and I tend to understand and follow his points, if not always agree with him when he makes them. So again, I haven't watched it, so if he makes a point that counters me somewhere, you can rage at me in the comments for not watching the dude's video.
Yeah. So if what I say sounds similar to what he says, it's not my fault. We just agree. Anyway, so for majors, the tournament organizers have to pony up a $500,000 prize pool or more, which Valve will then add $500,000 to. Similarly, the minors will have to have a $150,000 prize pool, which Valve will also, again, add $150,000 to. So anticipate a lot of tournaments with $1 million or $300,000 prize pools. Those will probably make up most of the majors and minors. Additionally, you have to have at least one qualifier for the 6 regions that were represented in TI7, being North America, South America, Southeast Asia, China, Europe, and CIS. So it's going to be a guaranteed representation of those 6 regions in each tournament, and also you have
plus
to have
invites, obviously.
Excuse me.
Plus invites. I mean, you're not going to have a 16 tournament land final.
According to the thing posted by Vercum Ready, it says at least one qualifier for 6 primary regions.
Well, what I was simply saying is again that at least is there. We could see 2 qualifiers. We could see invites. Expect to see invites, because you know that like OG and EG are not going to play in your qualifier unless there's a damn good reason to.
Yeah, and they shouldn't have to, for now at least.
For now, yeah. I mean, when you've got teams where taking second is a bad placing.
Yeah, I mean, if they punt the international, then you can make a case. But
yeah,
for now, they should play in whatever tournament they damn well please.
Yep.
So anyway, you're gonna have to have representation for those 6 tournaments, or for those 6 regions in each tournament, and you have to have a LAN final, which is pretty.
Could be Summit. Summit qualifies. It doesn't have to be a epicenter size final. It just has to be LAN.
Yeah, though Summit would also have to up their price because they had 100,000 for Summit 7.
Hey, they Summit 850 grand. You know that they would be all over that. They probably are already selling pitches to try and get advertisers to get more money. Because if they could turn Summit into a minor event for Valve, one, bumps up the price pool to 300 grand, and 2, it just completely changes the game. And BTS would then be on the same stage as ESL. I mean, ESL was putting on, or Dream League. Dream League's only $100,000.
That's true.
So again, I don't think DreamHack's going to put up 500 grand. I think that DreamHack will do 150 and make it a minor.
I'd agree with that. But also for 2018 at the International, there will no longer, I don't believe there will be qualifiers or direct invites. Correct? It now works on the
invites. No. There will be qualifiers. However, the invites will be based off of the numbers.
Okay.
So we will still see some sort of open qualifier/qualifier shenanigans.
Yeah.
But the teams that are being invited will now have a direct number correlation.
Okay. So the teams receiving a direct invite are based upon, rather than the unscientific method we discussed, semi-scientific method we discussed, receive points for placing in the various majors and minors, and those are added up from the top 3 players of each team and are put towards your place in the international. And they scale closer to the international is weighed more heavily than immediately after the previous international. So a tournament in October of 2017 is going to be weighed less heavily than a tournament in July of 2018 for the 2018 international. And you will again, only the top 3 players of each team, which they state is because it allows new players to get added to teams more regularly.
Yeah.
And finally, detailed leaderboards for QPs of players and teams will be available because it's fun.
What this also means is that, like, not so much fantasy in terms of the way that, like, there's technically fantasy points in Dota, but you could totally do a competitive season 2017 to 2018 fantasy league where you pick up players and then you do some wheeling and dealing and make your 5-man or 6-man or 8-man team, and you've got I don't know how you would do it, but you could theoretically, like, with you and your friends, make that and pick your dream team, and whoever has the most points at the end of the season wins.
It does lend itself well to that kind of fantasy play, and naturally,
I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to happen in terms of, like, on, like, a DraftKings.com or anything like that. Although, let's be honest, if you can gamble, it's going to happen.
That's true. That's very true.
But I know that personally, I'm going to throw this down in, a Discord that I've got and be like, yo, predictions time. After TI, I want everybody to sit down and we're going to bet out what we got and have all the analysts fight with each other over who gets which player. And then for the next 12 months, we're all going to lord over each other when we have good games and bad games and mock each other. It's going to be glorious.
That would be quite entertaining. And yeah, I definitely think there is a market, and having that kind of defined season does lend itself well to that kind of, like you said, DraftKings, a more conventional fantasy season. I've played plenty of fantasy football for money and actually have a winning record. I walked away with a in the black. So
nice.
Yeah. Not many people do. Anyway. So it's a very, once again, similar to the Capcom Pro Tour, also to many of the different Olympics. It basically blows away everything that we kind of have come to expect in terms of Dota 2 majors.
Indeed.
So we're going to go over the good and the bad and potential concerns for this new setup. So we're going to start off positive. I'm going to go over my good. And I'll let you jump in, add, or subtract from any of the things. So my very first point, which I think is pretty straightforward. It adds stakes and relevance to every tournament that qualifies as a major or minor. Again, the invite system for majors was less than scientific. This makes it obvious. It lets you know that the points from this tournament will contribute directly to a team's placement in the international. That makes it much more. If you take your esports seriously, you might want to make sure that Virtus Pro, how do they do at the summit? Will it put them over the hump? Will potentially jeopardize them, et cetera, et cetera.
Like we were talking about a team secret, where, like, did they have a shot? If looking at Summit 7, if Summit 7 was Summit 8 or 9, let's say, right before TI 8, and we knew what all the points were for all of the players, that completely changes the storyline for us from the standpoint of we know, not we speculate. And that makes it so cool to me.
It does.
I'm sure it does to you in at least a small degree.
And not only that, but it would make it for the summit. Like, imagine, and this is a very real possible scenario that could have been the case. Virtus Pro versus Team Secret. 6th invite on the line in the finals of the Summit 7.
So many viewers.
So many
extra viewers.
Yeah. I mean, that their mouths would be watering over that idea.
Yep.
And if you enjoy competitive Dota 2, you'd be more likely to tune in than otherwise. Again, we can speculate that maybe Virtus Pro was going to get the invite. It's a TI7 regardless of how they did at Summit, but they might not have, and we would know in this format, and that's good. Again, it gives you more reason to watch the non-major tournaments, especially towards as TI approaches. I assume that it's going to prevent some of the kind of conflicting schedules that we get as well.
I think we'll either have more or less conflict in schedules.
Yeah, I mean, again, Summit 7 and Galaxy Battles were kind of stepping on each other's toes just a little bit. And that's a small example. There have been much bigger examples, which I'll get to later. A point that was brought up by Nahaz specifically that I 100% agree with is that this, at the very least, guarantees it gives some kind of guarantee in terms of prize money. In terms of getting the prize money, I should say. In all of esports, not just Dota 2, there is a not insignificant chance that you will win a tournament and not see a dime from it.
Yeah. I think that... Sorry, just really quickly. I think that that's a problem that we are seeing less of, but it's still going to be a problem. And I think that the biggest issue is that sometimes people don't understand the way that works. For example, in the FGC, a lot of pro players get mad that they don't get paid out immediately because they're used to playing in a tournament where the entire prize pool is, the money that you paid them at the beginning. So it's cash in, cash out, compared to if it's a net 30, 45, or 60 tournament where the tournament doesn't get the money from the sponsors, which is that pot bonus, until say it's 30 days out. That means that they then have to take the money from the sponsors, turn it around, and get it up to the pros. And so that's a problem that we've been seeing in FGC in terms of just simply timelines. So on top of obviously the bad things like tournaments not paying out, period. Looking at you, Brano.
Yeah, I mean, for the example of Evo, the money I believe that players win is just straight out of the actual entry fees, correct?
Yes and no. For Evo, for the most part, yes. But then there are, for example, Injustice 2, Tekken 7, and Street Fighter 5 all have pot bonuses that come from
publishers and developers.
In this case, the publishers, but they could have also been other sponsors. And that's an instance where if you win Street Fighter 5, you're going to get a check from probably Joey Kueller himself the next day. And I probably butchered your last name, Joey. I'm sorry. You're going to get a check from the big man when you're walking out the door for your prize pool winnings of the money that people paid into the tournament, but your 25 grand extra from the Street Fighter 5, pot bonus, you got to wait for Capcom on.
Yeah.
So, and obviously with Dota, because you don't have entry fees, you're waiting for all the money from the sponsors.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to be different from tournament to tournament, and you can imagine that the more established organizers are going to have money in the bank such that they don't have to wait for that extra income from the sponsors and from other sources of revenue to come in before they can pay you. But again, some tournaments just don't pay ever, and at the very least, like I said, having Valve be the one to cut the checks, you can expect pretty comfortably that you're at least going to get that, which is good for teams.
Yeah. I also wouldn't be surprised if Valve sort of had the money up front. Valve might just pay straight to the players.
It's also possible that they will take complete control of the actual prize payout. We don't
Valve
know.
Says, hey, you give us the money and then we'll pay out all of it.
Yeah.
That would
that's
suck
good
for some tournaments.
It might suck for some tournaments. We don't know at this point, but
pure speculation.
It does give some guarantees to the players, which is very nice because it is still the Wild West in a lot of ways. And having the scaling, at least to some degree, stops what we saw in previous majors in terms of events closer to the tournaments being more heavily weighted. It prevents teams from winning one tournament and then just sitting out the rest of the season, which is good.
Although technically, if a team won, say, the first two tournaments of the year, And then like the last two tournaments of the year, they could skip everything in the middle and still get like a middling invite.
That's true, but I'd
Like,
imagine
maybe I'm not like guaranteeing it, but it's possible.
Yeah, we don't 100% know because we don't know what kind of points we're looking at yet, but it certainly helps. You know, again, we've seen plenty of teams win one LAN and then just hang them up for the season and wait for the major. And we're going to see, I imagine, less of that for now.
Yeah. Again, it's all about the numbers because something to note here: points for tournament will be awarded based on the prize pool of the tournament. That means that if Epicenter wants to super heavy load and like put in, I'm making up a stupid number here, $10 million prize pool.
Yeah, then that's not going to happen. But
that's not. Of course, it's not going to happen. But like at the same time, out of all of the tournaments that would heavyweight, it would be either Epicenter or a Chinese tournament, and then sort of hope that the CIS teams do well here. But then the team that wins Epicenter gets tons of points for TI. Like, I mean, I can't even imagine how many points because the point is that the larger the prize pool, the more points that particular tournament will award. And they did say in a tweet somewhere that was sort of a clarification tweet that it's effectively not just like, it's more like $1 per dollar. A major tournament, like a $500,000 tournament, is not just like 5 to 1.5 in terms of the number of points that you would get if you won.
Yeah.
Like with that minor, it's like 10 to 2. Like it's a significantly larger amount because the major is supposed to be bigger. And so
I could see that.
Even if it's only $1 million or $2 million, if you wanted to put down the cash to make your major a super major, you could.
It'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Actually goes into season 2.
Yeah. My last good point, because it's mostly bad for me, which is usually how I'm doing things. I don't know. I don't know if I'm a naturally negative person or if I'm just cynical or what, but I've got 3 general good points and then a bunch of bad. My final one. It keeps Valve from unintentionally exploding the entire schedule. Or intentionally exploding the entire schedule, depending on how cynical I feel on the day. Boston Major killed Dream League back in 2016. They're supposed to be Dream League was supposed to be running a Dota 2 tournament in December. It hugged up too close against the Boston Major, and it killed Dream League's tournament. They just decided not to have one, and I think they replaced it with Street Fighter.
I think maybe I don't remember, but yeah, they replaced it with something, and it was not.
They replaced it with something, and I think it was Street Fighter. But either way, it keeps Valve from just screwing with everybody else.
Now, everybody can screw with everybody else, though.
Everybody else can screw with everybody else, but they already can, theoretically.
Yeah, that's true.
This keeps
because if you've got $1 million tournament versus a $150,000 tournament, which one are you going to go to?
Yeah.
But if it's a minor versus a major, you've got a lot of those teams going, okay, well, if we take 8th at the major versus 1st at the minor, 1st at the minor pays out better and gets more points. We're going to the minor.
Yeah, you got to crunch the math on that if you're a team manager. I guess it also gives new weight to being a team manager in terms of breaking out the calculator. Well, breaking out the calculator for this too.
Go Kips, go. You know she's going to have a massive spreadsheet for TNC.
I mean, if I am a manager for a team, I'm going to have like 6 or 7 spreadsheets going right now. Just in anticipation of this, because it's a big deal.
I have a couple friends that are very excited because they are huge spreadsheets nerds, and I'm like,
ooh, that's good.
Cool. I like clean data, but spreadsheets sometimes overwhelm me, to be perfectly honest. Too much data. Like, I'll try to read like an entire spreadsheet at once instead of trying to break it down into smaller stuff, and it's just like, nope.
I am also a spreadsheet nerd. Like, man, Google Sheets has just changed me in a good way. But anyway, any good points that I missed that you have?
Nope. I pretty much agree. I think, yeah.
All right, so now we're going to the bad. And again, I had lots of bad. Start from the top, which is probably the smallest issue in my mind. forcing tournaments to have the six regional qualifiers.
I think I'm gonna go ahead and just be upfront with the contradiction here. I think that it is a minor complaint, but I think that it's one where we had tournaments already. This isn't supposed to be this is supposed to be a way to fold in the ESL ones, to fold in the Galaxy battles, to fold in the Zotac Cups that are these bigger tournaments.
Yeah.
Not to fold in the Well Play Invitationals, not to fold in the MDLs, although MDL this time is that, but like the Chinese leagues. We're not trying to provide points for that stuff. We're trying to provide points for the stuff that already was international and that Valve was already probably giving more weight than the intra-regional. Valve has always cared more about inter-regional competition over intra-regional competition. That's why Faceless didn't just get straight up invited, because even though Faceless normally pops everybody in SEA, Faceless doesn't do well outside of SEA. Yeah. As an example.
My primary gripe is, let's be straight. Well, if it was a matter of having a team from those 6 regions,
yeah,
I would be completely fine with it then.
Okay.
Well, generally speaking, again, I've harumphed in the past about these South American teams getting free passes to big tournaments.
I will counter that in a moment. I will let you finish your first part and we'll go back to it.
I've been harumphing about that, but I think it's kind of unnecessary to have, let's say you invite Virtus Pro to your tournament. Do you really need to also have like a tier 2 team at this point, like a Na'Vi or a Vega Squadron as well to comfortably represent?
Your issue is that there is qualifier versus so what you want is we invited EG. We don't want anybody else from NA because they're going to be here.
Generally.
Okay.
Depends on the size of the tournament,
but I can't disagree with it as it is. I understand where you're coming from.
I mean,
I don't consider it a full negative, though.
There definitely is some nuance there because you look back on ESL 1 Genting, and that was they did a good job of making it a Filipino tournament. Or not Filipino. Was it? Where's Genting?
It's. I want to say it's Malaysia. Now you've got me concerned. Genting is in Malaysia, literally on the border between 2 of the provinces, and it's not too far from.
Okay, but yeah, so that tournament they did a great job of making it one feel like a real tournament.
Yep.
But also really kind of waiting. Having a more heavy representation of Southeast Asian teams, and that's good if you're going for the sports entertainment route, which is again not a bad thing. I'm a professional wrestling fan. I don't mind having your local hero win, and maybe stacking the decks, not in a competitive way, but just making it more likely that the crowd is going to go home happy.
Yeah,
I don't mind that. I think from a pure sports perspective, that giving heavier weight to, or giving hedging the bets in favor of the teams that can't really hack it, I don't think that's good. I don't think it's good from a pure sports format, and I think that having the forced representation of 6 different regions also kind of takes away from the sports entertainment aspect. It's like an awkward middle ground.
Sports entertainment aspect, yes. Of the international competition, no. To note, somebody pointed this out, that up until only a few years ago, there was no requirement for North American teams to be in stuff for Valve to like your tournament. But yeah. I guess I don't remember when exactly. I want to say it was 2014. I don't remember exactly when, but at some point, Valve started suggesting, it was behind the scenes, I don't know exactly, but we started seeing more NA teams competing and everything else, and it has helped North America grow. Here's the difference between North and South America. South America is so much more esports nutty than North America is. I feel
That's
very comfortable making that statement.
I would not disagree with that.
I mean, so I think that South America having an opportunity now to grow like this is huge. Now, there is the issue of the fact that the 5 best South American players all got their asses banned for life a year ago for match fixing, but that's what we call consequences.
Yeah. You can't be throwing matches. Again, we discussed this frequently. Integrity of the sport is important.
Yes.
Again, my general idea is that it's not bad to have to kind of again stack the deck in terms of making sure that the fans go home happy by having a local-ish team or a popular team win.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily bad.
No. And you can also still do that because it's only 6 teams required. So if you only have one SEA team come for whatever, let's say we're in a Chinese tournament. You don't want Southeast Asian teams there because Southeast Asia. So you let one team qualify in, and then you invite 4 Chinese teams plus an invited team. That's still technically a major.
That's true. And I will discuss that later because that's actually one of my points.
Okay, continue.
Yeah, it's just to summarize, it's not really sports because you're making sure that lesser teams get in. Again, South America can't really hack it, and outside of Virtus Pro, not many of the CIS teams can really hack it all that well. You know, they can with the CIS teams. Some of Empire can be competitive.
Yep,
but not necessarily. They're not a powerhouse.
Again, I think this is time for CIS in South America to grow.
It could be. Either way, they're not there yet. And from a pure sports perspective, you don't throw the NFL with the Mexican market. They're trying to push in very hard. They actually give teams extra roster spots just to bring in Mexican
roster spots. I knew they paid extra money for when they did it in London. I didn't realize that they also got extra roster spots.
They used to.
Wow.
Yeah. Not on the main team, but on practice squad and that kind of stuff. Which is still a big deal.
Did not know. It's a huge deal. I didn't know that because I knew that, like, for example, the Jacksonville Jaguars have played in London the most because they're the team that consistently has the lowest amount of home team fans, and so they're like, sure, we'll take extra money to go play somewhere else. We aren't losing anything.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, that was how they tried to help the Mexican football, infrastructure.
Yeah, and obviously, as far as I can tell, Mexico's 50-50 on whether or not they actually enjoy NFL matches. So
yeah, and either way, they didn't, say, hey, NFL teams, you can have an extra, they didn't give artificial weight to having having Mexican players on your team, and they are giving in Dota 2 artificial weight to having South American, real weight. Not artificial weight. They're giving real important stuff for your tournament to have just some South American team.
Yeah, but again, I think that we're gonna have to wait until the international is over. I think that's
true. If Infamous makes a run,
yeah,
then I look like an idiot.
Yeah, and I'm always for us looking like idiots. Because typically that means that there's a good underdog story there. I'm not saying that I love it when we're wrong, but I do love it when a good story proves us wrong. So
there's nothing. There's no problem with being wrong. It's just being able to admit that you're wrong.
So I think that I'm going to go with the general. I disagree with your, now that I've thought about it a little bit, the concern, because it is at least one qualifier for 6 primary regions. That means that if you only want one South American or SEA or NA for whatever reason team, then you just don't invite anybody from there. You host the qualifiers, and whoever gets through gets through.
Yeah.
And then you hash out your other 12 slots from there if it's a 16 team tournament.
But if it's Summit 7 again, 8-team tournament,
then you invite 2 teams and you run quals for everything else.
Yeah, which I mean, well, it's not awful, but like I said, it doesn't have the.
But
it's not pure sports entertainment. It's not pure sports, and
and
it's
an
awkward middle ground.
Dota's going to have to grow into. I don't think it's a bad thing overall, and I think that seeing CIS be split off from EU is good in terms of Russia is the largest market for Dota right now. There are so many freaking Dota players. They maxed out their open qualifiers bracket twice. They had 1,020. That is 5,000 individual people saying, yo, I want to play Dota. I want to play at TI. Now, obviously, a lot of those people didn't expect to make it past the first round because,
It's still an astounding number.
But at the same time, that's still 5,000 people that went out of their way to sign up for open qualifiers.
Yeah. I mean, same as you said, South America is also really...
So if they have the opportunity to grow, I think that they will fill into those shoes. North America has done it a little bit. Europe, China, Southeast Asia, all doing it in their own ways over their own timelines. So anyways, I think
completely agree, and they could get there. They probably will get there, but they're not there now.
Get a little circular, I'm noticing, and I've also,
Anyway,
which flip-flops.
Let's move on to the next point. So the lack of clear roster rules at this point. I mean, the fact that you only get the top 3 players on your team for points, that kind of feels to me like it encourages poaching.
I think it might a little bit, but it also encourages... I don't know, because it's weird, because it's not like... Because you only get points based on your result. It's not like you get points based on like how you compete. Because like obviously the support would get less points overall because of, they're not getting kills, they're not buying items. But no, it's just how well did you do. So that is a little bit odd, but at the same time, it does encourage experimentation down the line.
There are a lot of ways that I could see it going.
Oh, there are definitely a lot of ways that they could see it going, and the roster lock seasons will exist is super vague, and to help facilitate new players breaking into the scene and other changes, only the top 3 point earners. Again, both of those could be really bad or they could be pretty good. I'm going to hold reserve judgment until the first 2 minors or the first major, whichever completes first. If we're still doing the show by then, which I'm sure we will be.
Hopefully.
I will. Same here. I will, I will make a remark on it then, but I don't want to make too heavy of a judgment on there, other than yes, it is mildly concerning.
For me, it's a step beyond minorly concerning.
Yep.
Not me. It's not like I'm losing sleep over it, because I don't really sleep over Dota stuff. But it's, man, I mean, I could see it going 2 ways, because like, let's say, let's say you are... Who got kicked off a secret after the Shanghai Major?
Well, that was the Arteezy Universe shit show, wasn't it?
Yeah, who got kicked off for them?
Oh, who got kicked off for them? Oh God. Yes, but this is going to promote more shenanigans like that.
Yeah, and again, it'll be good for... It'll be fine for Secret, because they kept those same 3 players.
Was that
Shanghai Major?
16?
Shanghai Major, it was We and Misery.
We and Misery are replaced by Arteezy Universe. That's right. Yeah, March 22nd.
Yeah, so...
And then 1437 rejoins Team Secret as coach 2 days later. And then in June, that's when... Yeah, because that's when Arteezy left.
The good thing...
replacing him, and AUI became sub. And then, yeah. Okay.
Continue. The good thing is that we would have retained his points, and Misery also. They would have retained their points, and they would have instantly become like massive free agents.
Yeah.
So that would have been great for them. I imagine that if you are a team that is getting some points, but not that many, and you have the opportunity to scoop up through whatever means, and again, this is Dota 2. There aren't the kind of League of Legends-y contracts that are actually enforced in the courts, or could be enforced in the courts as effectively. We saw that with Eternal Envy's issues with Secret.
Yep.
He didn't get everything in writing. I could very easily...
That's on players.
It is on players, and they need to organize / get real managers, but it's also on the teams as well, because I imagine if you're Team Secret and you've got points, somebody might want to be like, hey, Eternal Envy, we know you don't like it here. Come join us and put us over the hump in terms of getting a TI-7 or a TI-8 invite.
And in the process, also screw over Team Secret, quite possibly.
Which would be hilarious. But yeah, I mean, again, we don't know yet. but I could very easily see all sorts of fuckery coming from this. And if we've seen anything in terms of Valve and how it handles roster rules, they're going to play it by ear. We're going to see teams get screwed over. And, let's say an Echo Fox shows up and buys Team NP. Let's say Team NP gets bought out by Echo Fox tomorrow. Man, how many teams are just going to get just ransacked by Rick Fox?
Considering the way that NP is playing right now, not that many. After
That's
TI,
true.
everybody.
Yeah. Okay, let's say he buys out the Danish Bears.
Rip EU. Rick Fox is gonna buy everything.
He's just gonna go through like he's picking apples. He'll be, I want this one, I want this one, and you're not gonna be able to stop it. Let's be straight. You're almost certainly not gonna be able to stop it, and Valve will probably legislate something afterwards. But beforehand, you're screwed. Anyway, that's my point. Again, it will be a kind of we'll see thing because we don't know the rules yet. Valve,
again, I'm slightly less worried than you are, although still.
Again, I'm not worried. I just anticipate this happening.
Yeah, and I'm waiting, reserving judgment for the first major, because again, a lot of this shit already happens.
It does.
So I don't know.
There's actual
exacerbate it.
Now there's a quantifiable reason to do it. Like you can be rewarded for this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you report somebody for not buying wards after the game, and you get that message. Thank you for improving the Dota 2 community. Like you're getting rewarded for abusing the system, basically. You're getting a thanks. Anyway, that's my thing. This is something that Nahaz brought up for my next point, and I completely agree with this. And this is going to sound kind of really harsh on my point, but Valve's practices when it comes to majors have been bordering, in my mind, on anti-competitive. That sounds bad, but when you put together stuff like, again, the Boston Major versus Dream League situation, the removal of compendiums for smaller tournaments, and a couple other factors, Valve has really done a great job of forcing other tournaments out of the market. Agree, disagree?
Yeah. I can see it. I had not given it much thought this time around, but I agree.
I'm not sure it's intentional, because a lot of that can just be chalked up to incompetence. But if I'm putting my 100% cynic hat on, it feels like Valve is throwing muscle around to kind of make the majors the tournament. And they're taking a huge step back from that with this by empowering.
And we'll see what that does. We could see compendium stuff come in for everything that's a major or a minor.
That's fine if they restore some of the infrastructure that was in place in terms of letting smaller tournaments exist. The example Nahaz brought up was that Dota Cinema tournament back in 2014-15.
Yep.
That had the sweet Juggernaut set that everybody wanted. Balance of the Blade, whatever. And, that was a great way to just make a tournament an actual tournament. And in this case, it would make a tournament into a legitimate minor. So not having that and not restoring that infrastructure, it kind of leaves kind of a vacuum there. In my mind, it's again the lack of.
Right here, I think I agree with you. I just haven't put the thought into it to be comfortable really remarking on it.
Yeah, the lack of again, it's the lack of knowledge. This feels like it's very sudden. We don't know what's going to happen, and again, if they restore the compendium stuff and let smaller tournaments more effectively monetize themselves, then this is a completely different discussion.
Yep.
If not, and again, I don't want to suggest that Valve is a heartless monopoly, but intentionally or unintentionally, they have forced out a lot of other tournaments over the years, and they need to put the things back in place that allowed all these smaller tournaments to thrive. and we don't know that they're coming back. And if you're going to do this, where a lot of stuff is weighted on the tournaments of the results of outside tournaments, you need to have as many as possible, in my mind. And doing so would be a good thing. It would help the scene, it'd help the players, and give more content for fans. And I think that they need to do that in order to really have this format work. And I'm getting kind of squeamish about how I said anti-competitive.
No, I mean, I again, we've talked about it before, but
not anti-competitive in the legal sense.
Yes, no, I agree with that. Yes, it was just simply. Anyways, we've talked about. I think that's really yeah.
And so next point, this is I kind of said I'll talk about this later, and you mentioned it. Chinese tournaments, Chinese money is funding Dota 2 tournaments in a disproportionate way. Like, a lot of the money in Dota 2 is coming from Chinese sources. And we saw with like the Dota 2 Asia Championship, 6 of 12 teams were Chinese. We saw WESG with their Olympic style format where teams had to be all from the same nation. That inherently favors China.
WESG is not going to count. Like, there's I guess it could.
Who won it?
Fair.
I'll note how many of the. Okay, it was first place is TNC. Was second place Cloud9?
Yeah, the Cloud9 at the time.
Infamous was there.
Yeah.
The Cloud9 at the time was Danish Bears.
Yeah, and then you got Alliance that beat Infamous.
Yeah. So all those teams.
I mean, it would be interesting to see. I honestly, if I am WESG, I don't know if I'm pushing to make it a major. Because on the one hand, as great as major is, my understanding of what WESG is trying to be is they're trying to transcend everything else. They're like,
they're trying to be the Olympics of esports,
which is hilarious considering that the Olympic Committee of Asia is putting together an actual Olympics of esports in 2020.
Good thing. But
yeah, I mean, I'm not here to talk about that because that's a complicated as hell.
My general point is that we have a lot of Chinese tournaments that inherently favors Chinese teams, and I could see a slippery slope there in terms of Chinese tournaments really kind of greasing the wheels for Chinese teams to really dominate international invites.
Yep.
I mean, again, the games aren't fixed by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that Chinese teams are more put in easier positions to succeed at these tournaments by having, again, 6 Chinese teams at DAC. It was won by Invictus Gaming, if I remember correctly. And with WESG, again, how many major teams are there out there that are all from one nation that aren't Chinese? Yeah,
I mean, I'm not disagreeing with that. And again, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And yeah, I would be worried about, again, I mentioned this earlier, and you kind of shaved it. We talked about DAC or Epicenter or some tournament deciding to shift it. Yeah, it's possible. Valve might have to step in and say no. After a certain point, the tournament does not get any greater in size. They could say that after $1 million prize pool, we're not going to increase the number of points that you get.
Yeah. And
again, because it's points per player, not points per team, you could throw together, half a secret and half a EG, let's say, go to this tournament, do okay, come back and split it back up.
Yep.
So there are a lot of potentials that could make things crazy, but at the end of the day, this puts a lot of power back in players' hands, which is what the Dota 2 community has said they want. I don't know if that's what I want, but that's what they say that they want. That's what they think that they want.
Also another thing that Nahas brought up is Epicenter. Their fan vote.
Yep.
Does that happen under these rules?
Maybe.
Should Valve allow it to happen? Because again, if you didn't notice it at the time or didn't see it at the time, for the last spot in Epicenter, it was decided by a fan vote, and the options were NP,
TNC,
somebody,
No, it's
TNC?
NP Faceless, and Navi,
Navi.
because my understanding is that there was an invited team that turned down the slot. Epicenter didn't want to say that's what it was, and that's what happened. Again, at the time, you had everybody screaming that if Navi had gotten it, that another team would have just been invited and it would have been fine, or that they wouldn't have brought in another team. People were just livid that it was clearly just a way for Navi to get invited. Whether or
Yeah.
not that it was, I think the point here is that yes, it is a problem to have a fan voted team just kind of coming in. Although, what difference is that to, hey, we're just going to invite Navi right off the bat?
That's valid.
So because I could totally see Summit saying, okay, all y'all, you get to vote for two teams. The two teams that get in are the two teams that we're inviting, and then we've got the qualifiers.
Yeah, I could absolutely
And like,
see
quite
that.
frankly, if you're up front and you give space for voting like that, I'm all for it. I am 100% down with new ways to both make interaction and make things more entertaining. Suns fan tweeted and was asking if his elimination mode or captain's mode or
Captain's mode was, or no,
captain's mode. Well, he
captain's
asked about
draft?
captain's mode, but captain's draft, the one where like you lose stuff over time,
Yeah.
or random drafting into whatever. It doesn't matter. Point is that Suns fan wants to make a minor tournament with a funky set of rules, and I am 100% down if you can get enough teams and put the money up to make it happen.
Yeah.
Because if you can get a team that can play through all 110 heroes and win with all of them, I think that team has earned their QP points, or their qualifying points, not their Q.
Yeah, QPs.
Yeah, their QPs.
Yeah, it's a fun idea. I'm just wondering
Again, I'm
how.
not saying this should be standard, but
Well, I'm just wondering how sports Valve is going to make this.
fair.
You know what I mean?
But again, because I like to talk about tennis for whatever reason, what difference is there to having a slight variation in how the tournament is being played, a la, you're effectively playing, captain's draft or whatever, where it's random draft and then you just draft out from there. And how similar is that to learning to play on grass for Wimbledon, clay for France, and
Yeah.
whatever for America.
I'll talk about MMA. UFC, obviously, in a cage.
Yep.
Well, in an octagonal cage. Bellator, its top competitor right now, is in a circular cage.
Yep.
And probably its number 3 competitor is Ryzen FF in Japan, and they're in a ring. Having kind of that shifting rule set does make it a little bit more fun, and especially in the case of a ring versus a cage, it's a game changer in terms of how grappling progresses. But yeah, having different tournaments have different feels, and I actually really like WESG. I didn't like how it panned out necessarily, but I love the idea of having nation-based teams, and I love the idea of having fun kind of temporary teams like Team Ukraine. If you remember what Team Ukraine was, it was like Always Wanna Fly, Dendy, Resolution, and a couple others. And that was just a really fun team because it was 5 guys from a few different teams coming together for Yay Ukraine. And that's fun.
And yay money, let's be honest here.
Yay money as well, but it was still fun. It was a new dynamic. So I'm not against this, but again, we don't know what Valve's real plans are for this.
Yep.
Are they trying to make Dota 2 into a quote unquote sport? If they are, then it's really tough to justify stuff like fan voting in Navi.
Yeah. And again, I think the biggest issue there was just the last minute announcement of it.
Yeah. It was a bad look.
Yeah.
It was a bad look. It wasn't necessarily bad in action, but it didn't look great. It definitely felt like a flimsy excuse to get Navi in there. Which again,
baby.
Not necessarily a bad thing.
Yep.
Because again, I'm a sports entertainment guy. I write about, my bread is buttered by writing about a sport where a guy is going to go fight a 49-0 boxer with a 0-0 record. That's Conor McGregor, by the way. I'm not against this. But the lack of information available is just a little, not to say worrisome, because again, I'm not worried. Because ultimately,
I think that we'll get a lot of information as time comes, because that's how Valve works. Valve is light information early, and they'll play it by ear, which is not a great thing, but it's not the worst
I was about to
thing.
say, by that you mean they'll just kind of make it up as they go along.
Yeah.
Not to bash Valve, but we've been watching them for a bit now. It definitely feels like they do that more often than not, especially when it comes to Dota 2 rules.
Yeah.
And my final point. I'm a little bit worried about the whole Family Feud style point system.
Okay.
For those who don't watch daytime game shows, Family Feud, you get 100 points for the first round, 200 points for the second round, and 300 points for the third round, which ultimately renders the first 2 rounds unnecessary.
I don't think that it's. I mean, we haven't seen the amount yet, and I understand. I'm assuming you're commenting on the fact that points for a tournament will partially scale a tournament's closer to TI be awarding more. I have no problem with that if it's where. Let's pretend that a major that is exactly $1 million.
Yeah.
Let's pretend that is worth 100 points for winning it. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say that if we have a major at month 0, like literally as soon as you can, that's worth 100 points. And then you have a major as close to the end of the season as you can, and that's worth 125 or 150.
Yeah, that's not bad.
And that's what I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a little bit where if you bust ass at the end, you get rewarded because, hey, you're doing well right now as it comes up, compared to a team that, because like if you've got a team that wins 2 tournaments, the first 2 majors of the year.
Yeah,
and like
if you win a major let's say you win a major in September and then a minor in October, you probably shouldn't be good all the way until August of the next year.
Yeah. And a team that wins a major in June or a major in April and a minor in June, I think should be weighted a little bit higher than a team that did the exact same thing 6 months prior. Yeah. Especially if that team that did the exact same thing 6 months prior hasn't done jack shit since then.
That's true. And of course, roster changes. You could see 2 teams or 2 players leave a team, and that's just the team sucks now.
Yeah. Again, so we'll see. And the other thing is that because these points are assigned to players, a player going through theoretically can just build up points throughout. And it's again just that, we can't just rest on our laurels because we did great up through the end, because it's worth us a little bit more as time goes on.
Yeah.
I had that listed on winning a couple at the end.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Mostly just had that there because I wanted clarification.
Fair enough. I agree, but I think my understanding or my hope is that it's going to be a little bit more like this. If for some reason a major at the end is worth double a major at the beginning, then yes, I'm 100% in your court. Yeah. I have a problem with it.
Any other bads for you?
Nope. That's pretty much covered it up.
All right. Any other general thoughts from you on this?
Nope, that's really about it. I think that the system will be interesting. Since we're talking about players, and we've been going for a decent amount of time, so we may want to end soon. TI, there are 6 players that are going back for their second win. Sumail and Universe going to be on the same team. AUI is now on NP, but was on EG when they won. So
yeah, that TI5 in there. EG.
Yep. TI5. We have Faith, who was the TI2 champion, playing for Newbie now. Puppy, who was TI1 champion, old man secret here. And then S4, who was on Alliance for TI3 and now OG. So I think it's kind of cool that except for TI6 and TI4, we have a returning champion from every single TI.
Yeah. And it is a little bit sad, again, that we saw a lot of players from past who have attended every TI in the past getting bumped out.
The thing is that they're still competing,
They are.
And that's players who have attended every single one. We still have 4. We still have Universe, Kuroki, Puppy, and DDC who have been at every single tournament.
Yeah, and then you have these 6
every
champions.
excuse me, every TI. I think
champions from a bunch of them.
Yeah, but then again, non-returning veterans. The fact that we still had Dendi, Ice, MMY, Xiaowei, Lanham, Misery, and Hao, who had played at the 7 players who had played at 6 consecutive TIs, is nuts. And those guys were still competitive at the end. So these guys are going in on their 7th year of competing just in Dota 2, not including Dota 1 or Han or anything else. And they're still competitive. These were all guys that had a chance to make it.
Yeah.
So I think that tells a lot to Dota in terms of that. Also, one last thing, and then I'm done. The entirety of MVP is back. The MVP Hot 6 / MVP Phoenix.
Yeah.
QO, MP Forev, Febi, and Dubu. QO on Fnatic. MP on Secret, Forev on Digital Chaos, Dubu on Digital Chaos, and Febi on Fnatic as well. So you can take the Korea out of TI, but you can't take the TI out of Korea.
No, you can't. So I've got one question before we wrap up. I sprung it on you last week. Again, you're Gabe Newell. You had something to do that morning, but you decided to sleep in. And instead you slept in until like 4:30 on a 4:30 on a Friday.
Okay.
The post office is closed and you forgot to mail away the paperwork to get execration to TI7. It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
It happens to all of us. You forget to send a Filipino team to your tournament. You screw some poor kids out of a windfall of cash.
Yeah.
You have to find a 16th team to TI7. Who do you pick? Go.
Assuming that all teams still existed as of, right now, pretending that we're still right after, because a lot of these players that didn't make it are going to get picked up as coaches.
That's true.
So first option is you pick up a North American team that's already in the States.
Yeah.
Just because that way they're in. Or second, maybe you grab Planet Odd for that NA team that's kind of a European team, and also the second place from last year. Otherwise, I really don't know who I would invite.
I've checked up on it, and I don't think that anybody from last year's Wings is actually made it to TI.
None of them made it, and they're split up so far across all of the teams that I couldn't be like, yeah, I want to bring back like 3/4 or like 3/5 or 2/5 of Wings. Because they're spread out across teams that didn't do that great.
Okay,
if they were closer, maybe, but
Shadow's on Eclipse.
Yep.
Blink is a free agent.
Yep.
Ice is a free agent.
I thought Ice was on a team.
Let me look.
He was on a team that was going to play through open qualifiers, and they didn't make it. That's what it was.
That's not. Yeah. So
yeah,
he's not on a team. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Anyways, continue.
Faith Beyond and Y are eHome.
Yeah, so eHome maybe. I mean, but again, with the number of Chinese teams that are already at TI, I don't know if I really want to invite another one.
Yeah, and
yes, that does mean that I should be inviting another SEA team. But if I can manage to get an SEA team in, then that means that I have to deal with all the Filipino paperwork anyways.
Yeah, I was about to say if you're dealing with with an SEA team, you are going to have to deal with visa stuff, and that's not easy. The lowest hanging fruit would be an NA team or one of the good European teams from European teams from the quote unquote good countries that can have the ability to comfortably without a visa travel into the United States.
Yeah, which is not as easy as it sounds.
No, it's not.
So again, I think that yeah, and I've got my rationale.
You have to pick one. Go.
Planet Odd.
Okay.
Again, like I said that last week, and I'm gonna say it again. Like I think they should all be able to.
You ended up settling in on Navi, I think.
No, I was waffling between Navi and Planet Odd, because Dendi. But I mean, actually, considering the fact that they're from an Eastern European country, they might have an easier time getting into the United States right now. Not about politics. We're not going to talk about that here. Again, I like Planet Odd in terms of they took second at TI last year. The team that took first isn't there anymore. Just bring them back. Again, this is like because one team's already hosed.
Yeah. And of course, as we mentioned at the start of the show, MDL going on, and Planet Audits is in there, right?
Yep.
So if they win,
oh,
wait, no, they're not.
Yeah. No, they're not. They are. They are not. Nope.
They're
MDL
in the other
is
one, Dream League.
Yeah, they're in Dream League. So they
Yeah, so if they win Dream League,
yeah. MDL is really quickly because they OG took first out of group stages. OG took first, LGD took second, LFY took third, Newbie took fourth, EG took fifth, Vici Gaming took sixth, Invictus Gaming took seventh, and Clutch Gamers took eighth. And we will see going into the playoffs, OG picked LGD, which was one of two teams they lost to. Because OG won, they got to pick who they played against. LFY will be playing Newbie. Again, this is the semifinals. And then losers bracket, we have EG versus Clutch, Gamers, and Vici Gaming versus Invictus. And that's going to slide up over the next several days.
Yeah. And granted, this is group stages. So you don't know how much oomph every team is really putting into this.
A fair amount, considering that if you took bottom half, you're eliminated immediately.
And I mean, it's a decent chunk of change.
Yeah.
But China's looking strong. China's looking strong.
Yep. Also, this will be a minor under the current.
It would be
under the news because 250,000 USD. So,
going to be interesting to see how that impacts a league. Going to be interesting to see how that impacts league play.
Yeah.
Whether or not that lends more willingness to teams to actually sit down and participate through an entire league, because
especially if that league is the qualifier system.
That's true.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, who was it that kicked out Team NP and basically said, "Yeah, we're not dealing with you anymore."
Yeah.
Who was it? Dream League.
Well, no, they what Dream League did is Dream League said that after NP left for the second or third, I forget which, Dream League season in a row, they said you don't get to come back for a year.
Yeah.
Because you keep bailing on us.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking of. And going to be interesting to see if they have more like ability to retain teams in that way. Because I was honestly kind of expecting Valve to go in the direction of a Riot in terms of actually establishing its own league. And I think that in terms of really having a unified body, that's missing out on that a little bit. But
yeah,
they made this bed. We'll get to see how they sleep in it. Anyway, we're done, right?
Yep.
All right, so like, comment, subscribe. It'll be on SoundCloud later. Gee, I am just tripping over my own tongue right now. SoundCloud later. Like, comment, subscribe, etc., etc. Follow us on Twitter at Rondina at MTarget Product. And yeah, check us out next week where we'll talk about something related to Dota 2.